Imagine for a moment that your thoughts are like seeds scattered by the wind. Some fall on fertile soil and grow into lush trees, while others may never sprout or may even produce thorns. The law of attraction tells us that these seeds, these thoughts, possess an indescribable power. They don't just float in our minds, they shape the reality around us. Have you ever found yourself thinking about something so intensely that it suddenly seems to start happening? Perhaps you were worried about a meeting or envisioning success in a project, and then, almost as if by magic, everything unfolds according to your expectations. It's not magic, and it's not coincidence. It's the law of attraction at work. But what does this really mean? In simple terms, the law of attraction suggests that whatever we focus our minds on, whether positive or negative, tends to manifest in our lives. Our thoughts, whether conscious or unconscious, are like magnets, attracting experiences, people, and situations that resonate with the energy of those ideas. However, long before the law of attraction became a popular concept, Buddha was already teaching that all that we are is the result of what we have thought. He warned us about the power of thoughts, not just as something that influences our mood, but as powerful forces that shape the very reality we live in. He understood that our thoughts were more than just silent words in our minds. They were the tools we use to sculpt our lives. And this is where our journey begins, with the understanding that just as a small seed contains within it the potential for a massive tree, our thoughts, no matter how small they seem, carry within them the power to transform our reality. Subhuti lived in constant unrest, always searching for something he couldn't name. Outwardly, he seemed like an ordinary man, but inside, there was a storm brewing. He observed the world around him, people always rushing, always worried, always dissatisfied, and wondered if there was a way to escape this constant agitation. There were days when Subhuti felt an emptiness so profound that it seemed impossible to fill. In his heart, he knew there was more to life than the daily struggle, more than the relentless pursuit of wealth, recognition, or even comfort. He longed for true peace, a serenity that would not be shaken by external circumstances. But where could he find this peace? How could he achieve something so elusive? It was then that he decided to seek out Buddha, the master whose presence radiated a calm that Subhuti had never experienced before. People said that being in Buddha's presence was like standing by a tranquil lake, where the waters reflected the sky without any distortion, where even the slightest breeze encountered resistance. Subhuti knew that if anyone could help him find the answer, it was Buddha. As he approached the master, Subhuti was immediately overcome by a sense of quiet. There was something in the way Buddha was so still, so at peace, that seemed to dissolve any internal noise. It was as if simply being in the master's presence silenced Subhuti's restless mind. "Master," Subhuti began, his voice almost a whisper, "how is it that, living in this chaotic world, you never seem to be disturbed? What have you found that I have yet to discover?" Buddha looked at him with a gaze that seemed to see beyond words, beyond the surface. "Subhuti," he said, "the peace you seek is not somewhere far away. It is not something you achieve, it is something you become. When you realize that what happens inside you defines what happens around you, then serenity is no longer a pursuit but a consequence." Subhuti felt these words penetrate deeply into his consciousness. He realized that the answer was not in escaping the world, but in changing the way he related to it. At that moment, something began to change within him, a small but powerful transformation. The restlessness that had haunted him for so long began to give way, and in its place, a new feeling of hope and purpose started to emerge. Still deeply moved by Buddha's words, Subhuti couldn't stop thinking about what the master had said. The words echoed in his mind, "The peace you seek is within you." But how? How could he, with his turbulent mind, find this unshakable serenity? Determined to understand more, he decided he needed more answers. The next day, he approached Buddha again, this time with a renewed fire in his heart. He didn't just want to understand. He wanted to feel, to experience this peace in every cell of his being. Upon finding the master, Subhuti asked the question that troubled him most, "Master, how can I find this serenity? How can I live in this world with all its distractions and challenges and still remain in peace as you do?" Buddha looked at Subhuti with deep compassion, but also with a firmness that made the disciple straighten his posture. "Subhuti," said Buddha, "the world around you is not what steals your peace. It is the way you see it. You are caught in the chains of your own thoughts, in the illusions that your mind creates. To find the serenity you seek, you must first learn to observe your thoughts without attaching to them. You must understand that you are not these thoughts. You are the space in which they arise and disappear." Subhuti listened intently, but there was something else that troubled him. "But Master," he asked, "if I am not my thoughts, then what am I? How can I distance myself from what seems to be a part of me?" Buddha smiled, a smile that carried centuries of wisdom, and replied, "Subhuti, imagine yourself as the sky. Your thoughts are like clouds. They come and go, but the sky remains. When you realize that your true nature is the vast, blue sky and not the passing clouds, then nothing can disturb your peace. Storms may come, but they never change the sky. So it is with your mind. When you identify with what is unchanging within you, serenity becomes natural, just as the sky is to the clouds." These words struck Subhuti with remarkable clarity. He understood that all his life, he had identified with the clouds, with the thoughts, emotions, and worries that passed through his mind, rather than with the vast space that allowed these things to exist. For the first time, he glimpsed what Buddha meant by true serenity. It was not an escape from the world, but a profound understanding that he was much more than the thoughts that passed through his mind. Subhuti felt that he was beginning to see what had previously eluded him. The serenity that Buddha emanated was not something he had conquered or acquired, but something he had become by understanding the true nature of the mind. And so, Subhuti began to practice what he had learned, observing his thoughts as clouds in the sky, allowing them to come and go, but never allowing them to obscure his true essence. With his heart full of new insights, Subhuti continued his journey alongside Buddha. He felt that he was changing, that something deep within him was beginning to align with the truths that the Master shared. However, there was still one last piece of the puzzle that he needed to fit. How exactly do thoughts shape reality? He saw in Buddha a serenity that transcended the world around him, but now he wanted to understand how that serenity translated into concrete actions and tangible results. One day, while walking together through a peaceful forest, Subhuti decided it was time to ask. "Master," he began, his voice calm but full of curiosity, "you have taught me that peace comes from within, that thoughts are like clouds passing through a vast and unchanging sky. But how do these thoughts connect with the external world? How can they, so fleeting and intangible, shape the reality we live in?" Buddha paused for a moment, observing the simple beauty of the nature around them before answering. "Subhuti," he said, "imagine that your thoughts are like seeds planted in the soil of your mind. When you plant a seed, if you care for it, water it, and protect it, it will grow into a strong and healthy plant. But if you neglect this seed or plant it in barren soil, it will never grow. So it is with thoughts. When you nurture them with attention and intention, they grow and manifest in the world around you." Subhuti reflected on this metaphor, but there was still something he didn't fully understand. "But Master," he continued, "does this mean that any thought, if nurtured, can become reality? Does it matter if the thought is good or bad?" Buddha nodded, his eyes filled with a wisdom that seemed infinite. "Exactly, Subhuti. This is what makes thoughts so powerful and at the same time so dangerous. A positive thought, filled with good intentions, can bring happiness, peace, and prosperity. But a negative thought, nurtured with fear or anger, can manifest as suffering and destruction. The universe is like a mirror. It reflects back what you project." As Buddha's words penetrated deeply into his consciousness, Subhuti began to see his own life in a new light. He realized that the moments of anguish he had experienced were not just the result of external circumstances, but also the fruits of his own thoughts and fears. He understood that if he wanted to change his reality, he would first need to change what he nurtured within his mind. In that moment, Subhuti began to perceive the true connection between the inner serenity he so admired in Buddha and the manifestation of reality around him. He realized that by caring for his thoughts as if they were precious seeds, he would not only achieve inner peace, but also begin to shape a more harmonious and positive world for himself and others. And it was there, under the welcoming shade of the trees, that Subhuti decided he would dedicate his life to cultivating thoughts that reflected the beauty and goodness he wished to see in the world. He knew that by doing so, he would not only find the peace he sought, but also help create a reality where that peace could flourish in all aspects of his life. Subhuti was now more at peace than he had ever been in his life. His days were filled with serenity and a deep sense of connection with the universe. However, as life tends to do, a great challenge arose, testing everything he had learned. It was one of those moments when the lessons of the past meet the present reality, challenging us to apply what we believe we know. One morning, Subhuti encountered a situation that put his practice to the test. While passing through a village, he found a group of people furious over an unjust decision made by a local leader. The tension in the air was palpable, and the conflict seemed on the verge of erupting into violence. Subhuti knew that the people's anger was understandable, but he also knew that if they allowed these negative feelings to dominate them, it would only bring more suffering. With a calm mind and an open heart, he approached the group and began to speak. "I understand the pain and frustration you feel," he said, looking into the eyes of each person. "But remember, it is precisely in this moment, when we are on the verge of losing our calm, that we most need the serenity we seek." Some of the villagers began to calm down, but others continued to protest, their anger still burning in their hearts. "It's easy to talk about peace," one of the men said, "but what should we do when injustice hits us directly? How can we just accept it and not react?" Subhuti took a deep breath before responding. True peace does not mean accepting injustice, but choosing the best way to confront it. We can respond with anger and perpetuate the cycle of pain, or we can act with wisdom and compassion, breaking that cycle. The choice is ours. Subhuti's words began to take effect. The group, which had been on the brink of violence, began to calm down, reflecting on what he had said. Subhuti knew they still had much to work on, but he felt that the seed of change had been planted. Later, as he walked back to the forest, Subhuti reflected on the experience. He realized that he had transformed not only his own thoughts, but also those of others, by choosing to cultivate serenity instead of anger. He knew that this was the true practice of the law of attraction. Not just thinking positively, but acting in accordance with those thoughts, thus creating a reality that reflected the peace and harmony he wished to see in the world. Subhuti was now more at peace than he had ever been in his life. His days were filled with serenity and a deep sense of connection with the universe. However, as life tends to do, a great challenge arose, testing everything he had learned. It was one of those moments when the lessons of the past meet the present reality, challenging us to apply what we believe we know. One afternoon, while Subhuti was walking through the village, he was approached by a man who carried deep bitterness in his heart. The man, irritated and full of anger, began to insult Subhuti for no apparent reason. Harsh, venomous words poured from the man's mouth, trying to shatter the peace Subhuti had so carefully cultivated. For a brief moment, Subhuti felt the old response of his heart, the desire to react, to return insult for insult, to let anger take control. But then he remembered Buddha's words, "You are not your thoughts, but the space in which they arise." He took a deep breath, and instead of reacting, he observed his own thoughts and feelings as if they were clouds passing through a blue sky. As the man continued to insult him, Subhuti remained calm, allowing the words to pass through him like wind passing through a tree without causing harm. He looked at the man with compassion, recognizing that the anger was not about him, but about the internal pain of the man who was expressing it. And then something extraordinary happened. The man's anger began to dissipate. He saw that his words were not having the desired effect. Subhuti was not defending himself, was not returning the aggression. Instead, he was simply there, present and serene, offering compassion in response to hatred. This confused the man. He had never encountered someone who responded to anger with such peace. Finally, the man stopped speaking. There were tears in his eyes, and he felt disarmed. "How do you do it?" he asked, his voice broken by emotion. "How can you remain so calm even when I am full of anger?" Subhuti looked at him with the same compassion he had felt the entire time. "I chose not to nurture the anger within me," he replied. "Just as the seeds we plant grow, the same happens with the feelings we cultivate. I choose to cultivate peace and compassion because I know that by doing so, I create a more harmonious reality for myself and for those around me." The man felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He realized that his anger had no power over Subhuti, and more importantly, that he too could choose to let go of the anger. With a deep sigh, he knelt before Subhuti and asked for forgiveness, not only for his words, but for carrying so much pain and bitterness in his heart. Subhuti helped him to his feet and smiled. "You don't need to ask for forgiveness," he said gently. "True strength is not in avoiding conflicts, but in choosing peace even in the midst of the storm. We all have this choice. We can all cultivate what we want to see flourish in our lives." In that moment, it wasn't just Subhuti's life that changed, but also that of the man who had approached him with anger. The power of intention, of the conscious choice of thoughts and feelings, became clear to both. Subhuti had faced the greatest test of his serenity and had emerged victorious, not by fighting but by standing firm in his peace. And so he continued his journey, knowing that no matter the challenges that arose, he would always have the choice of how to respond. He now knew with unshakable certainty that his reality was shaped not by the actions of others, but by the peace and compassion he chose to cultivate within himself. Over time, Subhuti became a well-known figure throughout the region, not for his wealth or power, but for the deep serenity that emanated from his presence. Those who met him felt something different, a tranquility that seemed to calm even the most troubled souls. He had become a living example of Buddhist teachings, proof that true peace was not only possible but accessible to all who were willing to cultivate their thoughts with care. People came from far and wide to see him, seeking answers to their own unrest, wanting to understand how a simple man could have achieved such deep serenity in a chaotic world. Subhuti never presented himself as a master but as a student of life, sharing what he had learned alongside Buddha. He knew that each person's journey was unique, but the principles that guided that journey were universal. One time, a young man came to Subhuti, tormented by doubts and fears. He had lost everything he had, and his heart was heavy with despair. "Subhuti," said the young man, "how can I find peace when everything around me is falling apart? How can I believe that my thoughts have power when life seems so cruel and unjust?" Subhuti looked at the young man with compassion, remembering the times when he himself had felt lost and directionless. He knew that words, no matter how wise, were sometimes not enough to heal a broken heart. But he also knew that truth, when lived, had a transformative power. "Come with me," said Subhuti, taking the young man for a walk through the nearby hills. They walked in silence, feeling the gentle breeze and hearing the birds' song. When they reached the top, Subhuti stopped and pointed to the horizon, where the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Look at this," said Subhuti. "The sun sets on the horizon every day, and the night takes over the world. But we know that even in the darkness, the sun is still there, just waiting for the right moment to shine again. So it is with our thoughts. Life may seem dark, but within you, the light of peace and serenity is always present, waiting to emerge when you decide to open yourself to it." The young man looked at the horizon, feeling Subhuti's words penetrate his soul. He realized that just like the sun, his own inner light had never disappeared. It was only hidden behind the clouds of his worries and fears. He understood that by choosing to nurture thoughts of hope and compassion, he could bring that light back, no matter how dark the night was. Subhuti continued, "Life will always bring us challenges, but it is how we choose to respond to those challenges that defines our reality. When you choose peace, when you decide that serenity is your response, the universe begins to reflect that choice. Just as the sun rises every day, you can be reborn every moment, shaping your life with the thoughts you choose to cultivate." The young man felt a new hope grow within him. He realized that the power to change his life was in his hands, in his mind, in his thoughts. And at that instant, he decided that he would begin to nurture peace within himself, just as Subhuti had done. He knew the journey would be long, but now he had a beacon, a direction. As the sun disappeared on the horizon, Subhuti and the young man stood in silence, contemplating the simple beauty of the world. There was no need for more words. Both knew that no matter the storms that life brought, true strength lay in maintaining serenity, in continuing to plant the right seeds, and in trusting that the universe would respond to that choice with the same beauty and harmony they saw in the sky above. And so Subhuti continued his life, not as a master to be followed, but as a living example of what is possible when one chooses to live with intention, peace, and compassion. He became proof that the law of attraction, when aligned with Buddha's wisdom, was not just an idea but a way of living that could transform not just a life but the world around.
Thanks for watching. Here we come to the end of this story based on Buddha's teachings to help us about the concept of law of attraction. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications. Share with your friends, and leave your comments below about what you thought of this Buddha story. We always bring inspiring stories with teachings from modern life.